Arthur, does it help to have someone to talk to?
My mother always tells me. She told me I had a purpose. Or is it getting crazy?
Welcome to Z Cineplex, say your ultimate entertainment destination. Welcome to Z Cineplex, the home of entertainment, creativity, and cinematic excitement. Our channel is dedicated to bringing viewers a rich collection of engaging content that celebrates the world of movies, storytelling, and visual entertainment. Whether you're a passionate film enthusiast, someone who enjoys discovering new cinematic experiences, or simply looking for high-quality entertainment, Z Cineplex is designed to be your go-to destination. We strive to create content that is informative, enjoyable, and engaging for audiences of all ages, offering a unique blend of movie-related features, entertainment updates, insightful discussions, creative videos, and much more. Every upload is crafted with attention to quality, ensuring that our viewers receive an enjoyable experience that keeps them coming back for more. At Z Cineplex, we believe that cinema is more than just watching films. It's about experiencing emotions, exploring stories, appreciating creativity, and connecting with people who share the same passion for entertainment. Our mission is to build a vibrant community where movie lovers and entertainment enthusiasts can discover exciting content, share their opinions, and stay connected with the latest trends in the entertainment industry. We are committed to consistently improving our content, embracing new ideas, and delivering videos that entertain, inform, and inspire our growing audience. Whether you're here for movie highlights, entertainment discussions, reviews, cinematic moments, or fresh creative content, Z Cineplex promises an enjoyable journey filled with excitement, quality, and unforgettable entertainment. Join our community by subscribing, turning on notifications, and becoming part of the Z Cineplex family as we continue to explore the fascinating world of cinema and entertainment together. Thank you for your support, and welcome to Z Cineplex, where every video brings entertainment to life. Joker is a 2019 American psychological thriller film directed by Todd Phillips, who co-wrote the screenplay with Scott Silver. Based on characters from DC Comics, the film serves as a standalone and alternative origin story for the Joker, presenting a grounded, character-driven interpretation that is separate from the continuity of previous Batman films and the DC Extended Universe. Starring Joaquin Phoenix in an Academy Award-winning performance, the film follows Arthur Fleck, a socially isolated and mentally ill aspiring stand-up comedian who works as a party clown in the crime-ridden, economically divided Gotham City of the early 1980s. Struggling with severe psychological disorders, relentless social rejection, financial hardship, and systemic neglect, Arthur gradually descends into madness after a series of traumatic events and personal betrayals. His transformation into the Joker sparks a violent anti-establishment movement among Gotham's disenfranchised citizens, challenging the city's wealthy elite and forever altering its social and political landscape. The supporting cast includes Robert De Niro as talk show host Murray Franklin, Zazie Beetz as Arthur's neighbor Sophie DeMond, Francis Conroy as his mother Penny Fleck, along with Brett Cullen, Glenn Fleshler, Bill Camp, Sheet Wiggum, Mark Maron, and Josh Pays. Todd Phillips first conceived the project in 2016 as a gritty, standalone character study that would differentiate itself from conventional superhero films. He and Scott Silver developed the screenplay throughout 2017, drawing significant inspiration from the psychologically driven cinema of the 1970s and early 1980s, particularly Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976, and The King of Comedy, 1982, while also incorporating thematic elements from influential Batman graphic novels such as Batman, The Killing Joke, 1988, and The Dark Knight Returns, 1986. Although Martin Scorsese was initially attached as a producer, he later stepped away due to scheduling commitments. Joaquin Phoenix, long reluctant to join comic book adaptations, became interested because of the film's intimate character-focused approach and officially joined the project in early 2018, with the remainder of the principal cast assembled over the following months. Principal photography took place between September and December 2018 across New York City, Jersey City, and Newark, New Jersey, with cinematographer Lawrence Sher employing a gritty visual style that emphasized realism and emotional intensity. Featuring an unsettling, Academy Award-winning original score by Hildur Guðnadóttir, Joker also became the first live-action theatrical Batman film to receive an R rating from the Motion Picture Association. The film had its world premiere at the 76th Venice International Film Festival on August 31, 2019, where it received an 8-minute standing ovation and won the prestigious Golden Lion, making it the first comic book-inspired film to receive the festival's highest honor. Warner Bros. Pictures released the film theatrically in the United States on October 4, 2019. Upon release, Joker generated widespread discussion and controversy for its depiction of violence, mental illness, and social inequality, while also receiving generally positive reviews from critics. Although opinions on its narrative and thematic messaging were divided, Joaquin Phoenix's transformative performance, Phillips' direction, Lawrence Sher's cinematography, Guðnadóttir's haunting musical score, and the film's psychological atmosphere were universally praised. The film became a global cultural phenomenon and an unprecedented commercial success, grossing more than $1.079 billion worldwide against a production budget of approximately $55.70 million. It became the first R-rated film in history to surpass the $1 billion mark worldwide and remained the highest-grossing R-rated film until it was overtaken by Deadpool Wolverine in 2024. At the 92nd Academy Awards, Joker received 11 nominations, the most of any film that year, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay, ultimately winning Best Actor for Joaquin Phoenix and Best Original Score for Hildur Guðnadóttir. The film also earned numerous honors from major critics' organizations and industry guilds, cementing its reputation as one of the most influential and commercially successful comic book films ever produced. A sequel, Joker, Folie Tilda, starring Phoenix and Lady Gaga, was released in 2024 but received largely negative reviews and significantly underperformed at the global box office, failing to replicate either the critical acclaim or cultural impact of its predecessor. In 1981, Gotham City is suffering from economic decline, soaring crime, labor strikes, and widening social inequality. Arthur Fleck, a lonely and mentally ill man, works as a party clown while dreaming of becoming a successful stand-up comedian. He lives in a deteriorating apartment with his aging mother, Penny Fleck, who frequently writes letters to billionaire businessman Thomas Wayne, believing he will rescue them from poverty. Arthur struggles with a neurological condition that causes uncontrollable bouts of inappropriate laughter, making social interactions difficult and often placing him in humiliating situations. He relies on medication and counseling provided through Gotham's underfunded social services program, where his therapist questions whether the treatment is helping him. Arthur keeps a journal filled with jokes, disturbing thoughts, and observations about his increasingly hopeless life. While advertising a store in clown costume, he is brutally attacked by a group of street youths who steal his sign and beat him in an alley. Afterward, His co-worker Randall sympathizes with him and secretly gives him a revolver for protection despite company policy forbidding weapons. Arthur also develops what appears to be a romantic relationship with his neighbor, Sophie Demond, a single mother living in the same apartment building, believing she understands and supports him during his struggles. Arthur's life continues to unravel. While entertaining children at a hospital, the revolver accidentally falls from his costume, leading to his immediate dismissal after Randall falsely denies giving him the weapon. On the subway ride home, still dressed as a clown, Arthur begins laughing uncontrollably when three intoxicated Wayne Investments employees harass a young woman. The men turn their attention toward Arthur, brutally assaulting him. In desperation, Arthur shoots two of the attackers in apparent self-defense before chasing the wounded third man onto the subway platform and executing him. Shaken yet exhilarated by his actions, Arthur flees into a public restroom where he performs an improvised, almost ritualistic dance that symbolizes his psychological transformation. The murders become front-page news throughout Gotham, with many working-class citizens interpreting the masked killer as a symbol of resistance against the city's wealthy elite. Thomas Wayne, now campaigning for mayor, publicly condemns the killings and dismisses those celebrating them as clowns, unintentionally fueling an anti-rich protest movement in which demonstrators wear clown masks inspired by the unknown killer. Meanwhile, severe budget cuts eliminate Gotham's social services program, leaving Arthur without therapy, education, or emotional support, causing his already fragile mental condition to deteriorate even further. Arthur attempts to pursue his dream of stand-up comedy by performing at a local comedy club, where Sophie appears to encourage him. However, his uncontrollable laughter repeatedly interrupts his routine, his jokes fail to connect with the audience, and his performance becomes painfully awkward. Around the same time, Arthur discovers a letter Penny has written to Thomas Wayne claiming that Arthur is Thomas's illegitimate son. Feeling betrayed, Arthur confronts his mother, who insists that Thomas abandoned them years earlier. Hoping to learn the truth, Arthur visits Wayne Manor, where he briefly encounters young Bruce Wayne and entertains him through an impromptu magic trick before being confronted by Alfred Pennyworth, who dismisses Penny's claims and orders Arthur to leave. Shortly afterward, detectives investigating the subway murders question Penny, whose emotional distress causes her to suffer a severe stroke that leaves her hospitalized. Arthur's humiliation deepens when Murray Franklin, the popular late-night television host whom Arthur idolizes, broadcasts footages of Arthur's failed comedy performance on his show, mocking him before a national audience and sarcastically referring to him as Joker. Determined to uncover his origins, Arthur confronts Thomas Wayne inside a luxurious theater showing modern times. Thomas angrily denies being Arthur's father, claiming Penny fabricated the story because she suffers from severe mental illness and insisting Arthur was adopted. Refusing to accept this explanation, Arthur breaks into Arkham State Hospital and steals Penny's confidential medical records. The files reveal that Penny had been institutionalized after developing delusional fantasies about a romantic relationship with Thomas Wayne. They also disclose that Arthur had been adopted and suffered horrific physical abuse and neglect as a child at the hands of Penny's abusive boyfriend while Penny failed to intervene. The repeated trauma resulted in permanent brain damage that explains Arthur's uncontrollable laughter and lifelong psychological disorders. Devastated by the revelation that his identity has been built upon lies, Arthur returns home and enters Sophie's apartment uninvited. Sophie reacts with fear and confusion, gently asking him to leave, revealing that their entire romantic relationship existed only in Arthur's imagination. Flashbacks confirm that Sophie was never actually present during the moments Arthur believed they had shared together. Completely detached from reality and overwhelmed by betrayal, Arthur visits Penny in the hospital and suffocates her with a pillow, telling her she always claimed he was meant to bring laughter into the world. Soon afterward, Arthur receives an invitation to appear on the Murray Franklin Show, as producers believe audiences will find his disastrous comedy performance amusing. Arthur fully embraces his emerging identity by dyeing his hair green, applying elaborate clown makeup, and adopting the persona of Joker. Before leaving for the television studio, Randall and fellow former co-worker Gary visit Arthur's apartment. After Randall falsely claims he tried to help Arthur following his dismissal, Arthur violently stabs him in the neck with a pair of scissors before repeatedly striking him to death. Despite the gruesome murder, Arthur allows Gary to leave unharmed, acknowledging that Gary had always treated him with kindness. As Arthur departs for the studio, Detectives Burke and Garrity attempt to arrest him aboard a crowded subway train filled with clown mask protesters. Their pursuit sparks chaos when one detective accidentally shoots and kills a protester, triggering a violent riot that enables Arthur to escape unnoticed amid the growing unrest spreading throughout Gotham. At the television studio, Arthur asks Murray Franklin to introduce him by the name Joker, reclaiming the insult previously used to mock him. During the live broadcast, Joker initially entertains the audience with bizarre humor before openly confessing that he committed the subway murders. When Murray criticizes his actions, Joker launches into an impassioned monologue condemning Gotham's wealthy elite, society's indifference toward the poor, and the hypocrisy of those who ridicule vulnerable individuals while ignoring their suffering. He argues that people only care when someone powerful is harmed, whereas someone like him is invisible. Declaring that Murray represents the cruel society that abandoned him, Joker abruptly shoots Murray in the head, killing him instantly on live television and sending the broadcast into chaos. Joker is arrested as Gotham erupts into widespread riots inspired by both his televised speech and the earlier subway killings. While police transport him through the city, a stolen ambulance driven by rioters crashes into the police vehicle, freeing him. As Joker regains consciousness, he emerges from the wreckage to the ecstatic cheers of thousands of masked followers. Standing triumphantly atop the destroyed police car, he performs a celebratory dance before using the blood from his mouth to paint a grotesque smile across his face, fully embracing his identity as the Joker. During the same night of anarchy, a masked rioter follows Thomas Wayne, his wife Martha, and their young son Bruce into Crime Alley, where Thomas and Martha are murdered, leaving Bruce orphaned, an event that foreshadows the future rise of Batman. Sometime later, Arthur is confined within Arkham State Hospital. During a session with a new therapist, he suddenly begins laughing to himself after thinking of what he describes as a joke. When asked to explain it, he simply replies that she wouldn't get it. Arthur then calmly walks through the institution, leaving a trail of bloody footprints behind him while an orderly pursues him down the hallway, ending the film on an ambiguous note that blurs the line between reality and Arthur's fractured imagination. Joaquin Phoenix stars as Arthur Fleck, Joker, a socially isolated, mentally ill party clown and aspiring stand-up comedian who dreams of making people laugh despite enduring constant rejection, poverty, and emotional neglect. Living in Gotham City's decaying urban landscape, Arthur suffers from a neurological disorder that causes uncontrollable bouts of laughter at inappropriate moments, further alienating him from society. After years of physical abuse, psychological trauma, and systemic failure, his fragile mental state gradually collapses, transforming him into the nihilistic criminal mastermind known as the Joker, whose violent actions ignite a citywide anti-establishment uprising. Phoenix immersed himself completely in the role, losing approximately 52 pounds, 23.5 kilograms, to achieve Arthur's gaunt appearance and developing the character's unsettling body language, distinctive laugh, and spontaneous dance movements. His intensely committed performance earned universal critical acclaim and won the Academy Award, Golden Globe Award, BAFTA Award, and Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Actor, making it one of the most celebrated performances in comic book film history. Robert De Niro portrays Morris Murray Franklin, Gotham City's popular late-night television host and Arthur's longtime idol. Murray initially ridicules Arthur by broadcasting clips of his failed stand-up routine on national television and mockingly referring to him as Joker, unknowingly contributing to Arthur's complete psychological breakdown. Later inviting Arthur onto his show for entertainment, Murray instead becomes the victim of Joker's televised confession and shocking act of violence that plunges Gotham into chaos. De Niro's casting intentionally evokes his collaborations with director Martin Scorsese, particularly his performances in Taxi Driver, 1976, and The King of Comedy, 1982, the latter serving as a major influence on Joker. De Niro acknowledged that Murray Franklin functions as a thematic counterpart to Rupert Pupkin, his aspiring comedian character from The King of Comedy. Zazie Beetz plays Sophie DeMond, Arthur's neighbor and a single mother raising her young daughter in the same apartment building. Initially presented as Arthur's romantic interest and emotional confidant, Sophie appears to support his aspirations and accompany him during several significant moments in his life. However, the film later reveals that nearly all of their interactions existed only within Arthur's deteriorating imagination, emphasizing the extent of his delusions and isolation. Beetz praised Joaquin Phoenix's dedication throughout production and described working alongside him as both an honor and an invaluable learning experience. Frances Conroy portrays Penny Fleck, Arthur's elderly mother, who suffers from serious physical illness and long-standing delusions. Once employed as a housekeeper for the wealthy Wayne family, Penny obsessively writes letters to Thomas Wayne, insisting that he will eventually rescue her and Arthur from poverty. Her hidden past and fabricated claims regarding Arthur's parentage become central to the film's emotional and psychological mystery, ultimately revealing years of deception, neglect, and abuse that shaped Arthur's tragic childhood. Hannah Gross appears as the younger Penny Fleck in archival records and flashback sequences that uncover her disturbing history. Brett Cullen portrays Thomas Wayne, Gotham City's influential billionaire businessman and mayoral candidate, replacing Alec Baldwin, who exited the production before filming due to scheduling conflicts. Wayne publicly condemns the clown-inspired protests spreading across Gotham while dismissing the city's lower-class citizens, inadvertently intensifying public resentment. Arthur believes Thomas may be his biological father before eventually discovering the painful truth surrounding his adoption and childhood. Carrie Louise Buterlo appears as Martha Wayne, Thomas's wife, who accompanies her family during the tragic events that culminate in her murder alongside Thomas, while Dante Pereira Olsen portrays their young son, Bruce Wayne, whose traumatic loss foreshadows his eventual transformation into Batman. Douglas Hodge appears as Alfred Pennyworth, the loyal Wayne family butler and caretaker, who confronts Arthur outside Wayne Manor while attempting to protect Bruce. Arthur's co-workers at Ha-Ha's talent agency are portrayed by Glenn Fleshler and Lee Gill as Randall and Gary, respectively. Randall initially appears supportive by secretly providing Arthur with a revolver but later betrays him by denying responsibility after Arthur is fired. His dishonesty ultimately leads to his brutal murder at Arthur's hands. Gary, in contrast, consistently treats Arthur with kindness and respect, prompting Arthur to spare his life despite killing Randall during the same encounter. Bill Comp and Sheet Wiggum portray detectives Garrity and Burke of the Gotham City Police Department, who investigate the subway murders and increasingly suspect Arthur's involvement. Their pursuit of Arthur throughout the film culminates in a violent confrontation aboard a subway train packed with clown mask protesters, where escalating civil unrest allows Arthur to escape. Mark Maron appears as Gene Flint, the pragmatic producer of The Murray Franklin Show, who arranges Arthur's appearance after the comedian's disastrous stand-up performance unexpectedly gains public attention. Sharon Washington portrays Deborah Kane, Arthur's compassionate but overworked social worker, whose counseling sessions reveal Arthur's worsening mental health before Gotham's budget cuts terminate the city's social services program, leaving him without education or therapy. Josh Pays portrays Hoyt Vaughn, Arthur's dismissive talent agency supervisor, who terminates Arthur's employment after the revolver falls from his costume during a children's hospital performance. Brian Tyree Henry appears as Clark, a clerk at Arkham State Hospital who reluctantly assists Arthur during his search for confidential adoption records, while Frank Wood portrays Dr. Benjamin Stoner, Penny Fleck's former psychiatrist, whose medical files expose the disturbing truth surrounding Arthur's adoption and childhood abuse. Among the film's supporting cast, Ben Warhead, Michael Benz, and Carl Lundstedt portray the three intoxicated Wayne Investments employees whose assault on Arthur aboard the subway results in the murders that trigger Gotham's clown-inspired protest movement. Stand-up comedians Gary Gelman and Sam Morrow make cameo appearances as performers at the comedy club where Arthur attempts his unsuccessful routines, lending authenticity to the stand-up comedy scenes. Brian Callen portrays Javier, another employee at HaHa's talent agency, while Justin Theroux, in an uncredited cameo, appears as Ethan Chase, a celebrity guest interviewed on The Murray Franklin Show. April Grace portrays Arkham therapist Dr. Sally, who appears during the film's enigmatic closing sequence as Arthur, now institutionalized, reflects on an unseen joke while leaving behind a trail of bloody footprints, bringing the story to its haunting and ambiguous conclusion. The origins of Joker can be traced back to the mid-2010s, when both director Todd Phillips and actor Joaquin Phoenix independently sought to create a radically different type of comic book film. Between 2014 and 2015, Phoenix expressed interest in starring in a small-scaled, psychologically driven character study centered on a comic book villain rather than a traditional superhero, having previously declined offers to join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, because of the long-term contractual commitments required for recurring franchise roles, including characters such as Bruce Banner, Hulk and Doctor Strange. Phoenix was searching for a standalone project that would allow him to fully immerse himself in a single, complex character. Initially, he dismissed the idea of portraying the Joker, believing the character had already been portrayed too many times and that there was little room for a fresh interpretation. Although his agent suggested arranging a meeting with Warner Brothers to discuss the possibility, Phoenix declined, believing the project would never materialize in the form he envisioned. Unbeknownst to him, Todd Phillips was independently developing a remarkably similar concept that would soon revive Phoenix's interest in the iconic villain. Phillips, whose career had largely been defined by successful comedies such as Road Trip, 2000, Old School, 2003, and The Hangover Trilogy, 2009–2013, had repeatedly rejected opportunities to direct traditional superhero films because he considered the genre overly dependent on spectacle and visual effects. Following the production and release of War Dogs, 2016, Phillips became increasingly interested in telling darker, more intimate stories focused on flawed human characters. He envisioned a comic book adaptation that abandoned the conventions of interconnected cinematic universes in favor of a realistic, adult-oriented psychological drama. Rather than emphasizing superhero action, elaborate visual effects, or franchise world-building, Phillips wanted to examine how an ordinary, vulnerable individual could gradually transform into one of popular culture's most infamous villains. He believed the Joker was uniquely suited to such an approach because, unlike many comic book characters, the villain lacked a single definitive origin story, providing exceptional creative freedom to reinterpret the character through a realistic and emotionally grounded lens. Phillips formally pitched the concept to Warner Brothers Pictures following the premiere of War Dogs in August 2016. During this period, he argued that the studio should diversify its DC film slate by producing modestly budgeted, filmmaker-driven standalone projects aimed at mature audiences instead of relying exclusively on interconnected blockbuster franchises. He believed audiences were becoming increasingly interested in original interpretations of familiar intellectual properties and proposed a film that would effectively invert expectations surrounding comic book adaptations. Around the same time, DC Films was re-evaluating the direction of its cinematic universe following the commercial and critical success of Wonder Woman, 2017. The studio subsequently became more receptive to projects existing outside the continuity of the DC Extended Universe, so allowing filmmakers greater creative independence. In August 2017, Warner Brothers officially announced Joker as the inaugural installment of what was initially envisioned as a separate line of standalone DC films, with Phillips directing and co-writing the screenplay alongside Scott Silver. Acclaimed filmmaker Martin Scorsese initially joined the project as a producer through his Cyclops Productions banner and was reportedly considered as a potential director during the project's earliest stages before Phillips assumed complete creative control. Although Scorsese later stepped away because of scheduling commitments and other producing obligations, his influence remained deeply embedded in the film's creative DNA. From its earliest drafts, Phillips and Silver intentionally avoided adapting any single comic book storyline directly. Instead, They developed an original narrative inspired by the psychological realism and morally ambiguous protagonists found in American cinema of the 1970s and early 1980s. The screenplay drew substantial influence from Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976, and The King of Comedy, 1982, both of which explore lonely, socially alienated men descending into violence and illusion. The filmmakers also incorporated selective thematic elements from landmark Batman graphic novels, particularly Alan Moore and Brian Bolland's Batman, The Killing Joke, 1988, and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, 1986, while deliberately avoiding a faithful adaptation of either work. Instead of emphasizing comic book mythology, Phillips and Silver sought to tell an entirely self-contained psychological tragedy exploring mental illness, economic inequality, social neglect, loneliness, and the collapse of an individual's identity. By setting the story in a stylized version of Gotham City inspired by New York during the late 1970s and early 1980s, they created a world that felt grounded in historical reality while remaining unmistakably fictional. The project generated considerable discussion within the film industry because it existed independently of Warner Bros.' ongoing DCU continuity. At the time, Jared Leto was portraying the Joker in the DCU following his appearance in Suicide Squad, 2016, and multiple reports suggested he was disappointed to learn that Warner Bros. Was developing a separate Joker film featuring another actor. Industry reports claimed Leto believed the studio had previously indicated that his own standalone Joker project would move forward and that he felt frustrated by the announcement of Phillips' unrelated film. Some reports further alleged that Leto approached his representatives in an unsuccessful attempt to discourage the production from proceeding. However, individuals associated with Leto later disputed these claims, maintaining that he neither attempted to sabotage the film nor left his talent agency because of the project's development. During pre-production, Warner Bros. Executives reportedly hoped to cast Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead role, believing Martin Scorsese's early involvement might persuade the Academy Award-winning actor to join the project. Phillips, however, remained unwavering in his belief that Joaquin Phoenix was the only actor capable of realizing his vision. According to Phillips, both he and Scott Silver wrote the screenplay specifically with Phoenix in mind, insisting that the objective was never to bring Phoenix into the world of comic book movies, but rather to bring comic book storytelling into the world of Joaquin Phoenix. Once Phoenix finally read the screenplay, he recognized that it embodied exactly the type of intimate, character-focused project he had been seeking for years. Nevertheless, he hesitated before accepting the role because of the enormous cultural legacy of the Joker and the psychological intensity required by the character. Phoenix explained that he was attracted by the opportunity to portray a deeply human individual rather than a conventional comic book villain, believing the film challenged audiences to empathize with someone society instinctively labels as evil. This commitment to psychological authenticity ultimately became the defining creative philosophy of Joker, distinguishing it from virtually every previous live-action comic book adaptation and laying the foundation for one of the most acclaimed performances of Phoenix's career. Todd Phillips and Scott Silver spent the entirety of 2017 developing the screenplay for Joker, with the writing process lasting approximately 1 year as they refined the story into a psychologically grounded character study unlike any previous comic book adaptation. From the outset, the filmmakers envisioned the project as a standalone film that prioritized emotional realism over traditional superhero spectacle. According to producer Ramatilan Koskov, securing approval from Warner Bros. Proved to be a lengthy and challenging process because studio executives were concerned about the screenplay's dark subject matter, mature themes, an unconventional approach to one of DC Comics' most recognizable villains. Phillips later recalled that the project encountered countless hurdles throughout development, largely because the Joker is one of popular culture's most iconic fictional characters and any reinterpretation carried enormous creative and commercial expectations. Rather than producing another action-driven comic book blockbuster, Phillips and Silver sought to create an intimate psychological drama exploring the gradual collapse of an ordinary man who is ignored, mistreated, and abandoned by society. Although the screenplay addresses issues such as economic inequality, class division, government neglect, social alienation, and public unrest, Phillips consistently emphasized that the film was never intended to function as a political statement. Instead, he described it as a deeply personal story centered on childhood trauma, untreated mental illness, loneliness, and the devastating consequences of a society that fails to care for its most vulnerable individuals. One line in particular: "The worst part of having a mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't," became the emotional foundation of the screenplay, reflecting the writer's desire to illustrate the isolation experienced by individuals struggling with psychological disorders. The screenplay was heavily influenced by the character-driven American cinema of the 1970s and early 1980s, particularly the work of Martin Scorsese. Phillips and Silver drew extensive inspiration from films such as Taxi Driver, 1976, Raging Bull, 1980, and The King of Comedy, 1982. All of which examine psychologically troubled protagonists whose deteriorating mental states lead them toward violence, obsession, or self-destruction. Additional influences included Serpico, 1973, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, Network, 1976, and the silent German expressionist classic The Man Who Laughs, 1928, whose permanently smiling protagonist has long been associated with the visual origins of the Joker character. Phillips also acknowledged the influence of classic Hollywood musicals, particularly in Arthur Fleck's increasingly theatrical dance sequences, which contrast beauty and performance against the character's psychological disintegration. Interestingly, Phillips maintained that despite the dramatic tonal shift, Joker shared thematic similarities with his earlier films, including the Hangover trilogy and its exploration of flawed individuals making increasingly reckless decisions and the unpredictable consequences of those choices. Although based on a DC Comics character, Joker intentionally avoids adapting any single comic book storyline. Instead, Phillips and Silver selectively borrowed thematic elements from several influential Batman graphic novels while constructing an entirely original narrative. The screenplay incorporates aspects of Alan Moore and Brian Bolland's Batman, The Killing Joke, 1988, particularly its portrayal of the Joker as a failed stand-up comedian whose disastrous life spirals into insanity. The climactic live television sequence, in which Arthur appears on The Murray Franklin Show, was partly inspired by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, 1986, which similarly depicts the Joker making a dramatic appearance on a talk show. Nevertheless, Phillips repeatedly emphasized that the film was not intended to be a direct adaptation of any comic book. Instead, he described the creative process as picking and choosing elements from decades of Joker mythology while discarding the traditional comic book framework. Rather than retelling an established origin story, the filmmakers sought to imagine a realistic psychological pathway through which an ordinary man could plausibly evolve into the infamous criminal known as the Joker. One of the screenplay's most significant creative decisions was rejecting the Joker's most familiar comic book origin, in which the character becomes physically disfigured after falling into a vat of toxic chemicals. Phillips and Silver considered that version too fantastical for the grounded world they were creating and instead replaced it with a gradual psychological transformation driven by abuse, neglect, poverty, humiliation, and emotional isolation. The absence of a definitive canonical origin for the Joker within DC Comics gave the writers considerable creative freedom, allowing them to reinvent the character without contradicting established continuity. Phillips later explained that he and Silver constantly challenged one another throughout development to push the story into increasingly uncomfortable and emotionally unsettling territory while maintaining authenticity. They viewed the Joker less as a supervillain than as the tragic culmination of years of untreated trauma and societal failure, believing that a realistic interpretation would be more disturbing than a traditional comic book narrative. The screenplay also deliberately preserves one of the Joker's defining characteristics, the ambiguity surrounding his true past. Throughout the film, Arthur Fleck functions as an unreliable narrator, with several major storylines including his apparent romantic relationship with neighbor Sophie Dumond ultimately revealed to exist only within his imagination, by refusing to provide definitive answers regarding which events are entirely real and by never explicitly identifying Arthur's precise psychiatric conditions. Phillips and Silver intentionally left significant aspects of the narrative open to interpretation. This ambiguity mirrors the Joker's long-established comic book tradition of contradictory origin stories, famously summarized in The Killing Joke by the character's remark that, if he is to have a past, he prefers it to be multiple choice. Phillips later remarked that nearly every scene in the film was designed to invite audience interpretation, allowing viewers to question the reliability of Arthur's perspective and the nature of the events unfolding around him. Phillips further grounded the screenplay by drawing upon the social atmosphere of New York City during the late 1970s and early 1980s, a period marked by rising crime rates, urban decay, financial instability, labor strikes, and deteriorating public services. Gotham City was deliberately modeled after this era to create an environment that reflected Arthur's emotional decline. One of the screenplay's pivotal moments to the subway shooting and the subsequent public reaction was partially inspired by the 1984 New York City subway shooting, in which Bernhard gets shot 4 young men after claiming self-defense. While Arthur Fleck is not a direct portrayal of Getz, Phillips acknowledged that certain aspects of the incident and its divisive public response influenced the narrative surrounding Arthur's transformation into an unlikely symbol of anti-establishment anger. These real-world inspirations allowed the filmmakers to present Gotham as a believable urban environment in which violence, inequality, and social unrest could plausibly give rise to the myth of the Joker. During post-production, an early draft of the screenplay dated April 2018 was leaked online several months before the film's theatrical release. Phillips confirmed that the circulating document represented an outdated version written approximately 6 months before principal photography had begun and no longer reflected the finished screenplay. Rather than pursuing legal action to remove the leaked script from the internet, Phillips responded with surprising indifference, noting that he found it amusing that audiences were analyzing an obsolete draft while the completed film had evolved considerably during production. The final screenplay ultimately preserved the filmmaker's original vision of a psychologically rich, morally ambiguous, and emotionally unsettling character study, helping establish Joker as one of the most distinctive and critically acclaimed comic book films of the modern era. Following the critical disappointment and commercial underperformance of Justice League 2017, Warner Bros. Pictures initiated a major restructuring of its DC film division. In January 2018, veteran executive Walter Hamada was appointed president of DC-based film production, replacing John Berg and becoming responsible for reshaping the studio's superhero strategy. Rather than focusing exclusively on interconnected blockbuster films within the DC Extended Universe, Hamada supported a more flexible creative approach that allowed filmmakers to develop standalone projects outside the shared continuity. As part of this new direction, Joker emerged as one of the studio's most unconventional productions. Unlike most modern comic book films, which routinely carried production budgets exceeding $150 million, Joker was developed as a relatively modestly budgeted psychological drama with an estimated production cost of approximately $55 million. The studio initially viewed the project as a creative experimenter and remained cautious about its commercial prospects because of its R rating, mature themes, and complete separation from the established DC franchise. According to industry reports, Warner Bros. Executives approved the comparatively small budget in part because they were uncertain about the film's commercial viability and hoped to minimize financial risk. Todd Phillips later acknowledged that convincing the studio to support his unconventional vision proved extremely difficult, explaining that numerous executives struggled to understand how a slow-burning psychological character study centered on the Joker could succeed as a theatrical release. Throughout the first half of 2018, Phillips continued refining the screenplay with Scott Silver while simultaneously assembling a cast capable of delivering the intimate, dramatic performances required by the project. During this period, Robert De Niro emerged as the leading choice for the role of television host Murray Franklin, whose relationship with Arthur Fleck would become central to the film's emotional and thematic climax. De Niro's eventual casting carried particular significance because the screenplay drew extensive inspiration from Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976, and The King of Comedy, 1982. Both of which starred the Academy Award-winning actor. The filmmakers viewed De Niro's participation as both a tribute to those influential films and a means of reinforcing Joker's identity as a character-driven psychological drama rather than a conventional comic book adaptation. Securing Joaquin Phoenix remained Todd Phillips' highest priority throughout pre-production. Although Phoenix had expressed interest in portraying a comic book character within a grounded character study years earlier, he remained hesitant to commit because of the Joker's iconic status and the psychological intensity demanded by the role. Phillips spent approximately 4 months convincing Phoenix to accept the part, repeatedly assuring him that the project would function as a self-contained dramatic film rather than a traditional superhero blockbuster. Once Phoenix officially signed in July 2018, Warner Bros. Immediately granted the film full production approval, officially green-lighting the project under the title Joker and announcing a theatrical release date of October 4, 2019. In its initial announcement, the studio described the film as an exploration of a man disregarded by society, emphasizing that it would be both an intimate character study and a broader cautionary tale examining isolation, mental illness, and social inequality rather than a conventional comic book origin story. During the same period, producer Ramatilan Koskov, a longtime collaborator of Martin Scorsese, officially joined the production team, helping preserve many of the creative sensibilities that had originally attracted Scorsese to the project. Although Scorsese had been involved during the film's earliest stages as a producer and was even briefly considered as a potential director, he ultimately stepped away from day-to-day producing responsibilities because of his commitments to The Irishman, 2019, another major production starring Robert De Niro. Nevertheless, his influence remained evident throughout the project's creative development, particularly in its emphasis on psychological realism, morally ambiguous storytelling, and its visual homage to the gritty urban dramas of 1970s New York cinema. Warner Bros. Also clarified that Joker would exist entirely outside the continuity of the DC Extended Universe, ensuring that Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal would have no narrative connection to Jared Leto's version of the character. The studio presented the film as the first installment in a proposed series of filmmaker-driven standalone DC projects that would allow directors greater artistic freedom without the constraints of shared continuity. Casting for the supporting ensemble accelerated rapidly following Phoenix's official involvement. Zazie Beetz was selected to portray Sophie Demond, Arthur Fleck's neighbor and imagined love interest. Beetz initially auditioned in person but was not chosen after her first reading. Determined to earn the role, she independently recorded and submitted a self-tape to audition, which impressed the filmmakers and secured her a chemistry test with Phoenix before she was officially cast. Robert De Niro entered formal negotiations shortly afterward and ultimately accepted the role of Murray Franklin, completing one of the film's most significant casting decisions. For the role of Penny Fleck, Arthur's emotionally troubled mother, Academy Award winner Frances McDormand was originally offered the part but declined due to scheduling and personal reasons. The role subsequently went to acclaimed actress Frances Conroy, whose performance would become central to the film's exploration of Arthur's traumatic childhood and fractured identity. Additional casting announcements continued throughout July and August 2018. Mark Maron joined the production as Gina Flint, the producer of The Murray Franklin Show, while comedian and actor Brian Callen was cast as Arthur's fellow clown co-worker Javier. One of the most publicized casting developments involved the role of Thomas Wayne. On August 27, 2018, Alec Baldwin was announced as portraying Gotham City's influential billionaire businessman and mayoral candidate. However, only 2 days later Baldwin unexpectedly withdrew from the project, officially citing scheduling conflicts. He also later remarked that he was uncomfortable with the screenplay's interpretation of Thomas Wayne, who was described as a wealthy, charismatic businessman resembling a successful 1980s political figure rather than the traditionally compassionate philanthropist portrayed in earlier Batman adaptations. Following Baldwin's departure, the role was quickly recast with Brett Cullen, who brought a more restrained and authoritative interpretation to the character while maintaining the screenplay's more morally ambiguous depiction of Gotham's most powerful family. By the conclusion of pre-production in late summer 2018, Todd Phillips had successfully assembled a cast led by Joaquin Phoenix, Robert De Niro, Zazie Beetz, Francis Conroy, Brett Cullen, Mark Maron, and numerous accomplished character actors. Combined with Warner Bros.' willingness to support an R-rated, filmmaker-driven psychological drama produced on a comparatively modest budget, the project represented one of the boldest creative departures in the history of modern comic book cinema. Although many industry observers questioned whether such an unconventional interpretation of the Joker could succeed commercially, the film entered principal photography with a clearly defined artistic vision that emphasized realism, psychological depth, and intimate character-driven storytelling over franchise spectacle, ultimately laying the foundation for one of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful comic book films ever produced. Principal photography on Joker began in September 2018 under the working title Romeo, with filming taking place primarily in New York City, Jersey City, and Newark, New Jersey. Todd Phillips sought to create a Gotham City that felt grounded in the gritty urban atmosphere of New York during the late 1970s and early 1980s, drawing visual inspiration from the city's economic decline, rising crime, and deteriorating infrastructure during that era. Shortly after cameras began rolling, Warner Bros. Confirmed additional members of the principal cast, including Robert De Niro, Brett Cullen, Shea Whigham, Glenn Fleshler, Bill Camp, Josh Pace, and Douglas Hodge, while Brett Cullen officially replaced Alec Baldwin as Thomas Wayne following Baldwin's departure shortly before production commenced. Academy Award-nominated filmmaker Bradley Cooper, who had previously collaborated with Todd Phillips, joined the project as a producer through his production company, further strengthening the film's creative team. Lawrence Sher, Phillips' longtime cinematographer and collaborator on several previous films, served as director of photography, developing a visual style that emphasized realism, natural lighting, muted color palettes, and intimate framing to reflect Arthur Fleck's deteriorating psychological state. Throughout production, Phillips and Sher worked closely to transform contemporary New York into a convincing recreation of Gotham City in 1981. Numerous streets, storefronts, subway stations, and neighborhoods were redesigned with vintage signage, classic automobiles, period advertising, graffiti, and practical production designed to evoke the city's troubled past. On September 22, 2018, the production staged one of the film's largest sequences at Church Avenue subway station in Brooklyn's Kensington neighborhood, which was extensively redressed to resemble the Bedford Park Boulevard station in the Bronx. This location served as the setting for the climactic clown mask demonstrations that erupt following Arthur Fleck's transformation into the Joker. Additional subway scenes, including several depicting violence and civil unrest, were filmed on the abandoned lower platform of Brooklyn's historic 9th Avenue station in Sunset Park, allowing the filmmakers to recreate Gotham's aging transit system with remarkable authenticity. Practical sets and real locations were favored over digital environments whenever possible, reinforcing the film's documentary-like realism. One of the most distinctive aspects of the production was Todd Phillips' unusually fluent approach to the screenplay. According to Zazie Beetz, the script continued evolving throughout principal photography, with Phillips frequently rewriting scenes on the day they were scheduled to be filmed. Because Joaquin Phoenix had undergone an extreme physical transformation by losing approximately 52 pounds, 23.5 kilograms, for the role, traditional reshoots months later would have been nearly impossible if his weight changed. As a result, scenes were often rewritten inside Phillips' production trailer immediately before filming. Cast members would memorize newly revised dialogue while in hair and makeup before performing the scenes only hours later. Beetz recalled that entire sequences were occasionally rewritten overnight, creating a highly improvisational working environment in which actors and filmmakers continuously refine character interactions throughout production. Although this unconventional process demanded exceptional flexibility from the cast, it also allowed performances to evolve naturally alongside Phoenix's increasingly immersive portrayal of Arthur Fleck. Joaquin Phoenix's commitment to the role profoundly influenced the atmosphere on set. Todd Phillips later explained that Phoenix became so emotionally invested in Arthur Fleck's psychological deterioration that he would occasionally leave the set without warning whenever he felt overwhelmed or unable to maintain emotional control. Many supporting actors initially worried they had somehow disrupted a scene or offended Phoenix, only to learn that he simply needed time alone to remain fully immersed in the character. Phillips emphasized that Phoenix's departures were never expressions of frustration toward the cast or crew but rather essential moments of emotional recalibration that enabled him to sustain the intensity required for the performance. Robert De Niro, however, was one of the few actors from whom Phoenix never walked away during rehearsals or filming. De Niro later praised Phoenix's extraordinary dedication, describing his work as intensely focused and completely appropriate for the emotionally demanding nature of the role. Production expanded beyond New York City as filming moved to Jersey City beginning on September 30, 2018. Resulting in temporary closures along Newark Avenue while key exterior scenes were completed. During October, the production relocated to Newark, New Jersey, where filming occurred between October 13 and October 16, utilizing several downtown locations to recreate Gotham's deteriorating urban landscape. Additional filming returned to Jersey City in November, requiring temporary closures along Kennedy Boulevard to accommodate production vehicles, period set dressing, and large-scale crowd scenes. Around the same time, Dante Pereira Olsen officially joined the cast as the young Bruce Wayne, participating in scenes filmed at Wayne Manor alongside Brett Cullen and Douglas Hodge. Actor Sheet Wiggum, who portrayed Detective Burke, later recalled that by late October the production had reached its midpoint and described the filmmaking experience as both emotionally intense and creatively rewarding due to the cast's complete commitment to Phillips' unconventional vision. During production, the film encountered relatively few major difficulties. The one labor-related incident briefly attracted public attention. Shortly before filming in Newark began, the Performers Union SAG-AFTRA received a complaint alleging that background actors portraying subway passengers had remained inside stationary subway cars for more than 3 hours without receiving their required contractual break while filming scenes in Brooklyn. Union representatives quickly visited the production, and the matter was resolved without further disruption. Despite the incident, principal photography continued on schedule, with filming returning to New York City during the final weeks of production to complete additional street scenes, interiors, and television studio sequences. Principal photography officially concluded on December 3, 2018, after approximately 2 months of filming. Later that month, Todd Phillips commemorated the completion of production by sharing behind-the-scenes photographs on social media celebrating the end of an unusually demanding but artistically fulfilling shoot. One of the production's greatest logistical challenges involved filming what would become the film's most iconic visual moment, the now-famous Joker Stairs dance sequence. Producer Emma Tilliner-Koskoff later described this sequence as the most stressful portion of the entire production because of the overwhelming presence of paparazzi and curious onlookers. Since New York City regulations offered relatively few restrictions on photographers operating in public spaces, the crew faced constant interruptions while attempting to preserve the secrecy of Joaquin Phoenix's fully realized Joker costume and makeup. The staircase used in the finished film, located in the High Bridge neighborhood of the Bronx, subsequently became an internationally recognized tourist attraction and one of New York City's most photographed film locations. According to the New York Times, the filmmakers initially considered using the staircase featured in American Gangster, 2007, but ultimately rejected it after determining that recent renovations had made the location appear too clean and aesthetically polished for the bleak, deteriorating version of Gotham they wished to portray. Visually, Joker was designed to evoke the appearance of classic American cinema from the 1970s while utilizing contemporary digital filmmaking technology. Todd Phillips and Lawrence Sher initially hoped to photograph the film on 65mm motion picture film for exhibition in the 70mm format, believing the larger negative would produce an exceptionally rich and cinematic image reminiscent of classic Hollywood dramas. However, Warner Brothers declined the proposal because of the significantly higher production costs associated with large-format film photography. Instead, principal photography was completed using Arri Alexa 65 digital cinema cameras, whose exceptionally high resolution and dynamic range allowed Sher to closely emulate the texture, depth, and tonal qualities of traditional large-format film while remaining within budget. Although the production ultimately embraced digital cinematography, Warner Brothers later honored Phillips' original vision by releasing Joker in select theaters with specially converted 70mm and 35mm exhibition prints alongside its standard digital release. Combined with Sher's atmospheric cinematography, Mark Friedberg's meticulously detailed production design, Jeff Groth's restrained editing, and Hildur Guðdagrí's Cubter's haunting score, the film's visual presentation became one of its most acclaimed artistic achievements, helping establish Joker as one of the most visually distinctive and psychologically immersive comic book films ever produced. Following the completion of principal photography in December 2018, Joker entered an extensive post-production process that continued throughout the first half of 2019. Director Todd Phillips collaborated closely with editor Jeff Groth to refine the film's pacing, psychological intensity, and deliberately ambiguous narrative structure. Rather than constructing the film as a conventional comic book or origin story, Phillips sought to preserve Arthur Fleck's unreliable perspective by carefully controlling the flow of information presented to the audience. In March 2019, Phillips confirmed that editing was still underway, emphasizing that the film was being meticulously shaped to balance realism, emotional intimacy, and suspense. 1 month later, during CinemaCon 2019, he explained that Joker remained a work in progress and described the editing process as unusually complex because much of the film's emotional impact depended on subtle shifts in tone, pacing, and audience perception. Phillips also reiterated his determination to keep the story's major surprises confidential before release, refusing to confirm or deny many rumors circulating online. He noted that widespread speculation had become inevitable because the film attempted to tell the origin story of a character who, throughout comic book history, has never possessed a single definitive or universally accepted backstory. During this stage of production, it was also officially confirmed that Brian Tyree Henry would appear in the completed film as Clark, a records clerk at Arkham State Hospital, whose brief but significant interaction with Arthur helps uncover the disturbing truth surrounding his childhood and adoption. The film's visual effects were intentionally restrained in comparison with traditional superhero productions, reflecting Todd Phillips' commitment to realism. Rather than relying on large-scale computer-generated action sequences, the visual effects primarily served to enhance practical photography, extend city environments, remove modern architectural elements, recreate period-appropriate locations, and seamlessly integrate production design with digital imagery. The work was completed by Scanline VFX and Shade VFX, under the supervision of Matthew Jompa and Brian Godwin, while Erwin Rivera served as the overall visual effects supervisor. Hundreds of subtle digital enhancements were employed throughout the film to recreate Gotham City's deteriorating early 1980s atmosphere, including skyline modifications, environmental cleanup, weather effects, crowd extensions, signage replacements, and invisible compositing that strengthened the illusion of a decaying metropolis without drawing attention to the technology behind it. The restrained approach to visual effects complemented Lawrence Sher's naturalistic cinematography and ensured that Arthur Fleck's emotional journey remained the central focus of every scene. During editing, Phillips removed several completed sequences to preserve the film's psychological ambiguity and subjective storytelling. One of the most notable deleted scenes occurred after Arthur's live appearance on The Murray Franklin Show, in which Sophie DeMond watches the televised broadcast from her apartment. The scene was originally included to reassure audiences that Sophie had survived Arthur's unexpected visit to her home earlier in the film, resolving one of its most debated narrative questions. Ultimately, Phillips decided to remove the sequence because it shifted the audience away from Arthur's perspective and undermined the uncertainty surrounding Sophie's fate. By leaving the encounter unresolved, the film maintained its commitment to presenting events almost exclusively through Arthur's increasingly unreliable point of view, encouraging viewers to interpret the story for themselves. Another deleted sequence featured Arthur openly confessing aspects of his criminal behavior to one of his former co-workers. Although the scene further explained Arthur's psychological transformation and motivations, Phillips concluded during editing that it relied too heavily on direct exposition. He believed the audience would better understand Arthur's descent through his actions, facial expressions, and increasingly erratic behavior rather than through explicit dialogue. Removing the scene strengthened the film's minimalist storytelling approach and preserved the emotional ambiguity that had become central to the screenplay's design. One of the most persistent production stories surrounding the film involved an alternate ending reportedly included in an early screenplay draft. According to production sources, the original script concluded with Arthur physically carving a Glasgow smile into his own face while standing before his newly inspired followers, permanently transforming himself into the iconic Joker. The concept was ultimately abandoned before filming. Industry reports suggested that Warner Brothers executives preferred to avoid directly replicating the permanently scarred appearance made famous by Heath Ledger's Academy Award-winning portrayal in The Dark Knight, 2008. Believing that each cinematic interpretation of the Joker should retain a distinct visual identity. Although the story has circulated widely among fans, the finished film instead concludes with Arthur painting a smile across his face using his own blood before transitioning to the ambiguous Arkham State Hospital epilogue. Despite its comparatively modest scale, Joker remained one of Warner Brothers' most financially disciplined comic book productions. The film's final production budget was estimated at approximately $55–70 million, representing only a fraction of the cost typically associated with modern superhero films, many of which routinely exceed budgets of $158–250 million. By comparison, Suicide Squad, 2016, Warner Brothers' previous Joker-centered DC film, carried a reported production budget of approximately $175 million. The lower budget reflected Todd Phillips' emphasis on practical locations, limited visual effects, grounded storytelling, and character-driven drama rather than large-scale action spectacle. Financing for the production was shared among several companies. Approximately $25 million of the budget was provided by the Toronto-based investment firm Creative Wealth Media, while Village Roadshow Pictures and Brant Studios each financed roughly 25% of the remaining production costs in partnership with Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Films. The film's unexpectedly enormous commercial success ultimately transformed this relatively modest investment into one of the most profitable comic book films ever produced. Following the completion of post-production, Joker became a landmark release within the Batman film franchise for its mature thematic content. The Motion Picture Association, MPA, awarded the film an R rating for strong bloody violence, disturbing behavior, language, and brief sexual images, making it the first live-action theatrical Batman film to receive an R rating in the United States. The classification reflected the film's graphic violence, psychological intensity, and mature exploration of mental illness and social collapse, distinguishing it from every previous live-action Batman feature. Internationally, the British Board of Film Classification, BBFC, assigned the film a 15 certificate, citing its strong bloody violence and language. The mature ratings reinforced Warner Brothers' commitment to preserving Todd Phillips' uncompromising creative vision and underscored the studio's willingness to position Joker as an adult-oriented psychological drama rather than a conventional superhero blockbuster. The completed film ultimately emerged from post-production as one of the most distinctive, artistically ambitious, and commercially successful comic book adaptations ever released, earning widespread acclaim for its editing, visual style, performances, and emotionally unsettling narrative. Warner Bros. Pictures launched the marketing campaign for Joker with an emphasis on mystery, psychological tension, and Joaquin Phoenix's transformative performance rather than traditional comic book spectacle. Director Todd Phillips played a central role in the campaign by personally sharing behind-the-scenes photographs and production updates through his official Instagram account during filming. Instead of revealing major plot details, Phillips gradually introduced audiences to Arthur Fleck's physical transformation, releasing carefully selected images that showcased Joaquin Phoenix's dramatic weight loss, clown makeup, and emotionally expressive appearance. This restrained marketing strategy generated considerable online discussion, with each new image fueling speculation about the film's tone, story, and relationship to previous cinematic interpretations of the Joker. By avoiding the visual style typically associated with superhero blockbusters, Warner Bros. Positioned Joker as a serious psychological drama intended for adult audiences rather than a conventional comic book adaptation. One of the campaign's earliest promotional highlights occurred on September 21, 2018, when Phillips released a short screen test featuring Joaquin Phoenix in full Joker makeup. Set to laughing by the Guess Who, the footage slowly transitioned from Arthur Fleck's ordinary appearance to his unsettling clown persona, ending with Phoenix's haunting smile. The minimalist teaser immediately attracted widespread attention across social media platforms and generated millions of views, with audiences praising Phoenix's unnerving facial expressions and the video's unsettling atmosphere. Rather than emphasizing action or violence, the screen test established the film's psychological tone and demonstrated that Phoenix's interpretation would differ dramatically from previous portrayals by Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, and Jared Leto. The teaser significantly increased anticipation for the project and became one of the earliest indications that Warner Bros. Was marketing Joker as a prestige psychological thriller rather than a traditional superhero film. The film's first full trailer premiered during CinemaCon in Las Vegas on April 2, 2019, where it was presented exclusively to theater owners before being released publicly online the following day. Featuring Jimmy Durante's rendition of Smile, the trailer highlighted Arthur Fleck's gradual psychological deterioration, his humiliating experiences as an aspiring comedian, and his transformation into the Joker while deliberately concealing many of the film's major narrative developments. Critics and audiences responded enthusiastically, praising the trailer's haunting cinematography, emotionally charged atmosphere, and Joaquin Phoenix's remarkable physical transformation. Many commentators observed that the footage bore a much stronger resemblance to classic psychological dramas such as Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976, and Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream, 2000, than to conventional comic book films. Reviewers frequently describe the trailer as dark, intimate, unsettling, and character-driven, with several noting that it appeared more like an independent psychological thriller than a mainstream superhero production. ComicBook.com's Jenna Anderson remarked that the trailer successfully distinguished Joker from virtually every previous DC adaptation by emphasizing emotional realism over action. Veteran voice actor Mark Hamill, who has portrayed the Joker in numerous animated Batman projects since Batman, the Animated Series, 1992, publicly expressed his enthusiasm on social media, praising the trailer and Phoenix's interpretation of the iconic villain. Some critics, however, remain more cautious. Jermaine Lussier of IO9 argued that the trailer revealed relatively little beyond imagery already shared through Phillips' Instagram account, though he still acknowledged the film's considerable potential. Within only a few hours of its online release, the trailer accumulated more than 8 million views, reflecting the enormous public curiosity surrounding the project. As the film's release approached, Warner Bros. Intensified its promotional campaign. On August 25, 2019, Todd Phillips posted a series of 6 cryptic teaser videos across social media. Each brief clip featured fragmented dialogue, distorted imagery, flashes of Arthur Fleck in various stages of his transformation, and hidden textual clues that collectively announced the arrival of the film's second official trailer on August 28, 2019. The full trailer expanded upon the film's narrative while maintaining the campaign's emphasis on psychological tension and emotional ambiguity. It provided audiences with a clearer understanding of Arthur's troubled life, his deteriorating mental condition, and the growing civil unrest spreading throughout Gotham City, while continuing to avoid revealing the film's most significant plot twists. The second trailer was widely praised for preserving the mystery surrounding Arthur's transformation and for further highlighting Lawrence Sher's cinematography, Hilder Gu8 nad Cubter's haunting score, and Phoenix's deeply committed performance. Filmmaker Kevin Smith publicly commended the trailer, remarking that the film appeared so compelling it could stand entirely on its own even without any connection to DC Comics mythology, praising its originality and artistic ambition. Warner Bros. Complimented the trailers with an extensive international marketing campaign that included theatrical posters, character banners, magazine features, television spots, digital advertising, outdoor billboards, and exclusive behind-the-scenes footage released throughout the summer of 2019. Promotional materials consistently focused on Joaquin Phoenix's Academy Award-caliber performance and the film's gritty realism rather than large-scale action sequences. The campaign also benefited enormously from the film's festival debut. Following its world premiere at the 76th Venice International Film Festival, where Joker received an 8-minute standing ovation and won the prestigious Golden Lion, Warner Bros. Incorporated the festival's accolades into subsequent advertising, positioning the film as a major awards contender in addition to a highly anticipated theatrical release. The studio further highlighted overwhelmingly positive reactions from early screenings, emphasizing praise for Phoenix's performance, Todd Phillips' direction, Lawrence Sher's cinematography, and Hilder Gu8 nad Cubter's score. According to Deadline Hollywood, Warner Bros. Invested an estimated $120 million in worldwide marketing and advertising, an exceptionally large promotional budget considering the film's relatively modest production cost. Following the film's theatrical release, Warner Bros. Adopted an unusually aggressive and unconventional promotional strategy by incorporating negative critical quotations into selected advertisements. Rather than avoiding polarized reviews, the studio used dismissive or hostile excerpts from some critics to reinforce the film's anti-establishment identity and appeal to audiences who viewed Joker as a bold, provocative work challenging conventional expectations. This marketing approach generated additional media attention and encouraged public discussion about the film's controversial themes, ultimately strengthening its reputation as a cultural event rather than simply another comic book adaptation. Combined with the sustained social media campaign, extensive festival recognition, exceptional word of mouth, and Joaquin Phoenix's widely acclaimed performance, the marketing strategy proved extraordinarily successful, helping transform Joker into one of the most commercially successful, culturally influential, and heavily discussed films of 2019. Joker had its world premiere on August 31, 2019, at the 76th Venice International Film Festival, where it immediately emerged as one of the festival's most talked-about films. Following its debut screening, the film received an 8-minute standing ovation, with critics and festival attendees praising Joaquin Phoenix's transformative performance, Todd Phillips' direction, Lawrence Sher's cinematography, and Hilder Gu8 nad Cubter's haunting musical score. The film subsequently made history by winning the festival's highest honor, the Golden Lion, becoming the first comic book-inspired film ever to receive Venice's prestigious top prize. The award significantly elevated the film's profile, transforming what had initially been viewed as an unconventional comic book project into a serious awards season contender. Following its triumph in Venice, Joker continued its international festival circuit with the screening at the 44th Toronto International Film Festival, IF, on September 9, 2019, where it received similarly enthusiastic reactions from audiences and critics. The festival's screenings generated extensive media coverage and established the film as one of the year's most anticipated theatrical releases. Warner Bros. Pictures released Joker theatrically in several international markets, including Australia, on October 3, 2019, before opening in the United States on October 4, 2019. The studio distributed the film in standard digital formats, premium large-format theaters, IMAX, Dolby Cinema, and select 70mm and 35mm presentations, fulfilling Todd Phillips' long-standing desire for the film to receive limited exhibition on traditional film formats despite being photographed digitally with a real Alexa 65 cameras. The 70mm engagements were particularly notable because they reflected Phillips' original vision of presenting the film with the visual grandeur associated with classic American cinema of the 1970s. The theatrical rollout was accompanied by one of Warner Bros.' largest marketing campaigns of the year, positioning Joker as both a major studio release and an adult-oriented psychological drama rather than a conventional superhero blockbuster. Following its enormous commercial success and widespread critical recognition, Joker remained a prominent presence throughout the 2019-2020 awards season. After receiving numerous nominations from major critics organizations, industry guilds, and International Film Academy (ASA), including a leading 11 nominations at the 92nd Academy Awards, Warner Bros. Announced a North American theatrical re-release beginning January 17, 2020. The expanded theatrical engagement allowed audiences another opportunity to experience the film on the big screen while increasing its visibility during Oscar voting. The strategy proved successful, as the film ultimately earned Academy Awards for Best Actor, Joaquin Phoenix, and Best Original Score, Hildur degrees nad cubter, further cementing its reputation as one of the most acclaimed films of the year. One of the more unusual events associated with the film's theatrical run occurred on November 16, 2019, when President Donald Trump attended a private screening of Joker at the White House. According to contemporary reports, the screening was organized for the president, members of his family, and invited guests. Although no official statement regarding the event's purpose was released, reports indicated that Trump enjoyed the film. The screening attracted widespread media attention because of the film's ongoing public discussions surrounding its themes of violence, social alienation, and political unrest. The film's release inevitably drew comparisons with the 2012 Aurora, Colorado, theater shooting, which occurred during a midnight screening of The Dark Knight Rises. Out of respect for the victims and their families, the Century Aurora and XT Theater where the tragedy occurred chose not to screen Joker. Prior to the film's release, 3 families of victims from the Aurora shooting, together with the mother of one witness, submitted a public letter to Warner Bros. Urging the studio to support stronger legislative efforts addressing gun violence. While emphasizing that they were not requesting the film be censored or withdrawn, they encouraged the studio to use its influence to advocate for policies intended to reduce firearm-related violence. In response to heightened public attention, several theater chains implemented additional security precautions. Landmark theaters, for example, prohibited moviegoers from wearing face paint, masks, or Joker costumes during screenings, while police departments in Los Angeles and New York City increased uniformed patrols around theaters showing the film as a precautionary measure, despite confirming that they had received no specific threats directed at local cinemas. Ultimately, despite weeks of media attention, heightened security measures, and widespread public debate, Joker opened successfully around the world without any significant violent incidents associated with its release. Screenings proceeded normally throughout its theatrical run, and no credible acts of violence linked to the film occurred. Instead, public attention quickly shifted toward the film's exceptional critical reception, record-breaking box office performance, and awards season success. The controversy surrounding its release ultimately underscored the film's status as one of the most widely discussed, culturally significant, and commercially successful motion pictures of 2019, with its theatrical debut becoming as notable for the conversations it inspired as for its extraordinary achievements at the global box office. Joker became one of the most remarkable box office success stories in modern cinema, dramatically surpassing industry expectations and redefining the commercial potential of mature, character-driven comic book adaptations. Produced on a relatively modest budget of approximately $55 to $70 million, The film ultimately grossed $335.5 million in the United States and Canada and $743.5 million in international markets, for a worldwide total of $1.079 billion. The film finished as the sixth highest-grossing film of 2019 worldwide and, at the time of its release, became the highest-grossing R-rated film in history. It also became the first R-rated motion picture ever to surpass the $1 billion milestone at the global box office, a record it held until Deadpool Wolverine exceeded its worldwide total in 2024. Even after losing the overall record, Joker remains one of the highest-grossing R-rated films of all time and continues to be regarded as one of the most profitable comic book films ever produced, owing to its comparatively low production budget, restrained marketing costs relative to other blockbuster superhero films, and exceptional theatrical endurance. The film achieved one of the highest budget-to-gross ratios in the history of the genre, surpassing the profitability record previously held by Deadpool, 2016. According to Deadline Hollywood, after accounting for production expenses, worldwide marketing, distribution costs, participations, and ancillary revenue streams, Joker generated an estimated net profit of approximately $437 million, making it one of Warner Bros.' most financially successful releases of the decade. Prior to release, industry analysts consistently underestimated the film's commercial potential because of its unconventional tone, R rating, and absence of traditional superhero action. In August 2019, Box Office Pro analyst Sean Robbins projected an opening weekend between $60 million and $90 million in North America. Following the film's triumphant world premiere at the Venice International Film Festival, where it won the Golden Lion, industry confidence increased substantially, with revised forecasts predicting an opening between $70 million and $95 million. Robbins later raised his estimate to $105 million, suggesting that Joker could become the first October release in history to debut above $100 million, surpassing the record established by Venom, 2018. Not all analysts agreed with these optimistic projections. Comscore senior media analyst Paul Dergarabedian argued that the film's psychological tone and adult-oriented storytelling distinguished it from mainstream comic book films and predicted a more conservative opening closer to $50 million. 3 weeks before release, official tracking settled on a projected debut of $65–80 million, with some optimistic estimates reaching $90 million. Audience demand continued to grow rapidly during the final week before release. Online ticket retailer Atom Tickets reported that advance ticket sales had surpassed those of Venom and It Chapter 2, making Joker its second best-selling R-rated release of 2019, behind only John Wick Chapter 3: A Prebellum. The film opened in 4,374 theaters across the United States and Canada on October 4, 2019, delivering a spectacular $39.9 million on its first day of release, including $13.3 million earned from Thursday evening preview screenings. Both figures established new records for the month of October, surpassing those previously held by Venom. The film also achieved the largest October opening day in domestic box office history, overtaking Halloween, 2018. Over its opening weekend, Joker earned an outstanding $96.2 million, comfortably breaking Venom's previous October opening weekend record and significantly exceeding virtually every industry projection. The debut represented the largest opening weekend of Joaquin Phoenix's career, the biggest opening ever for director Todd Phillips, and one of the strongest debuts in Robert De Niro's long acting career. At the time of release, it also ranked as the fourth largest opening weekend ever for an R-rated film, trailing only Deadpool, 2016, Deadpool 2, 2018, and It, 2017. Additionally, the film delivered Warner Bros.' largest domestic opening weekend in more than 2 years, demonstrating the studio's successful repositioning of DC Comics adaptations toward more diverse storytelling. Unlike many modern blockbuster films that experience steep second weekend declines, Joker displayed exceptional box office endurance throughout its theatrical run. During its second weekend, the film declined by only 41.8%, earning $55.9 million while remaining the #1 film in North America. The result established a new record for the highest second weekend gross ever achieved by an October release, surpassing Gravity, 2013. In its third weekend, the film collected $29.2 million, followed by $19.2 million during its fourth weekend, finishing in second place behind Maleficent, Mistress of Evil on both occasions while continuing to attract substantial audiences. The film maintained remarkable consistency over the following months, benefiting from strong word-of-mouth, critical acclaim, award season attention, and repeat viewings. After an impressive 155-day theatrical run, Joker concluded its North American release on March 5, 2020, with the final domestic total of $335.5 million, making it one of the highest-grossing R-rated films in North American box office history at the time of its release. Internationally, Joker proved equally successful, substantially outperforming expectations across nearly every major overseas market. Before release, the film was projected to earn approximately $155 million worldwide during its opening weekend, including roughly $75 million from 73 international territories. The film quickly exceeded those forecasts, earning $5.4 million from its first 4 international markets on opening day before expanding to 47 overseas territories, where it generated $18.7 million on its second day for an early international total of $24.6 million. By the end of its first weekend, Joker had accumulated an impressive $140.5 million from international markets, contributing to a global opening weekend of approximately $234 million, the largest worldwide debut ever for an October release. Among its strongest opening markets were South Korea, where it earned a Warner Bros. Record $16.3 million, followed by the United Kingdom with $14.8 million, Mexico with $13.1 million, and Japan with $7 million. The film continued to dominate international box offices in subsequent weeks, earning an additional $125.7 million worldwide during its second weekend and $77.9 million in its third, reinforcing its status as one of the year's most successful global releases. By the end of its third weekend, industry observers widely predicted that Joker would become the highest-grossing R-rated film ever released, with many analysts suggesting that its worldwide total could eventually surpass the $1 billion mark, a milestone previously considered unattainable for an R-rated film. Those predictions proved accurate. During its fourth weekend, after earning an additional $47.8 million internationally, Joker officially surpassed the lifetime global gross of Deadpool, 2016, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated film in history. Approximately 1 month after its theatrical release, the film crossed the $1 billion worldwide threshold, becoming the first R-rated film ever to achieve that milestone. It retained this historic distinction for nearly 5 years, until Deadpool Wolverine became the second R-rated film to exceed $1 billion in 2024. Beyond its record-breaking financial performance, Joker demonstrated that an adult-oriented psychological drama centered on a comic book character could achieve both critical acclaim and extraordinary commercial success without relying on the conventions of traditional superhero cinema. Its unprecedented theatrical performance fundamentally altered industry perceptions regarding the commercial viability of mature comic book adaptations and remains one of the defining box office achievements of the 21st century. Joker received a mixed but deeply polarized critical reception, with reviewers broadly agreeing that Joaquin Phoenix's performance was extraordinary while remaining divided over the film's themes, screenplay, social commentary, and portrayal of violence. Upon release, the film sparked one of the most extensive critical debates of 2019, with many commentators praising its artistic ambition and psychological depth, while others questioned its originality and interpretation of mental illness, social alienation, and political unrest. Despite the divided critical consensus, The film earned widespread acclaim from audiences and industry organizations, becoming one of the most discussed and culturally significant films of its year. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, Joker holds an approval rating of 68% based on 598 critical reviews, with an average rating of 7.3. The website's critical consensus states, Joker gives its infamous central character a chillingly plausible origin story that serves as a brilliant showcase for its star and a dark evolution for comics-inspired cinema. On Metacritic, which assigns weighted average scores from selected critics, the film received a score of 59 out of 100 based on 60 reviews, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audience reactions, however, proved considerably stronger than those of professional critics. Moviegoers surveyed by CinemaScore awarded the film a B+ grade on its traditional A+ to F scale, while audiences polled by PostTrack gave it an 84% overall positive score, averaging 4 out of 5 stars, with approximately 60% of respondents stating that they would definitely recommend the film to others. These audience scores reflected the film's powerful emotional impact and its ability to resonate with viewers despite its controversial subject matter. Among the film's strongest supporters was Mark Kermode of The Observer, who awarded Joker 4 out of 5 stars, praising Todd Phillips' direction and especially Joaquin Phoenix's transformative performance. Kermode described Phoenix's portrayal as mesmerizing, emphasizing the actor's remarkable physicality and emotional vulnerability while arguing that the performance elevated the film far beyond a conventional comic book adaptation. Similarly, Jim Vejvoda of IGN awarded the film a perfect 10 out of 10. Describing it as an engrossing psychological character study that would remain compelling even without its connections to DC Comics. He argued that its status as a Batman-related film only enhanced an already exceptional work of cinema, praising its exploration of social neglect, systemic inequality, and violence while calling Phoenix's performance unquestionably Oscar-worthy. Sean Brooks, also writing for The Observer, likewise awarded the film a perfect score, describing Joker as gloriously daring and explosive. Brooks commended Todd Phillips for drawing inspiration from the cinematic language of Martin Scorsese while still crafting an original and emotionally devastating story. Owen Gleiberman of Variety similarly praised the film, describing Phoenix as astonishing in his portrayal of a psychologically fragile man.